let's all have a good think about this discussion. And while my time was limited doing this, I do hope people get something from this. The discussion around these sort of topics are important in the long run, and as a whole, it should be highlighted that things, especially as of today, need to be understood in these contexts properly. Thank you. I actually encountered an interesting video. This actually does relate to more than just men in this context. While this advice he's talking about men is very applicable to a certain generation and of time, I think it also applies to much of the other issues surrounding things. And I will expand on later. And today with us, I have a friend. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, what's up? My name's Mike. Just helping out Brandon a little bit here. Let's see what we get today.
Let's watch this video. Because as I said, there's some very good advice, and let's have an open round discussion. Shall we?
Let's go.
That just seemed like they were completely ice cold.
Sorry, let me just get it.
Have you ever met somebody that just seemed like they were completely ice cold? No emotions, no emotional availability. They were just like a ghost walking around in a human's body. Almost as if they'd seen something and they could never unsee it.
I think, though, this expands to greater issues. For example, if someone's been through enough stuff in their life as well, this also applies. If they've been through enough trauma or events around them that caused them to develop detachment. And for context, that is a way you respond to situations in which you emotionally detach to not have a mental breakdown. Do you have any comments on this sort of phenomenon yourself?
Nah, just have to come from the heart, really. I think it's when you experience it yourself, that's when you can really empathize with someone. You really have to be in their shoes literally to actually understand this. It's not gonna happen that you're just like super empathetic. Like women are just gonna be totally turned off from you if you're like cold like this.
But the thing is, though, it's not just women's. It's not a women issue, is it? Though, I mean, it's an everyone issue. Even other men who are more empathetic on their end, they will still not really understand it either. Don't you agree? So I'm just saying, let's not make it a completely gendered thing here, because this is a human thing. People who have lots of extreme emotions will not really understand properly. I mean, or something, or they might in the opposite end. But let's not linger too much, shall we?
No worries.
It's one of the most awful things that can happen to a human being. Going through some sort of traumatic event that changes the way they look at everything in life. I knew somebody that was like this. It was my grandfather. When I was a kid, I would go over to visit him, and he always seemed like he just didn't really care that I was around. Now, this was on my father's side.
I personally never had this happen. As in like a family member, on my end. But in
No, I
terms
have
of
to agree.
agree to what specifically?
Yeah, I mean, like I've had like people in my family, for instance, like they've gone to war, but they can still sort of recover from that. So it actually shows you what kind of trauma is necessary here to cause that kind of.
Mike, he does mention war later on, yes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still an interesting case that, I guess in my case, I don't never experience this because I personally never had much of a excessive relationship with my family, and it's quite dysfunctional even at best. So in my case, isn't it just a case of like, I partially understand, but also at the other end of the day, the issues with my own family is due to other reasons, not necessarily war.
On my mother's side, my grandfather was much more present.
No, I get
But
you there.
on my dad's side, my grandpa truly didn't really give a fuck. Even when he talked to my dad, and my dad would try to like include me in conversations, like hey, Jack's doing this, he's in soccer, he's drawing, or he's doing good in school. My grandpa would just sit there without a single reaction. It was like he didn't even process it. He would sit there on the chair and watch TV all day long. He lived a really rough life.
And at the end of the day, if you ever see someone doing that, that's a sign of trauma. That's not really a sign. Of course, there's also an aspect of it which could be that there's a degree of narcissism or hatred towards you, of course. But that's also a sign of huge trauma or PTSD. Don't you agree? Do you agree with that statement? I said?
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing just to basically take your mind off the subject to really sort of daydream and all that. But when you got the 1,000-yard stare going on, something's really gone wrong.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. This applies to more than just men in this context, because the issues that he's going to mention in this video expand to a much greater degree than just men. Especially with our society getting more and more cruelty based, because ultimately, as the society gets more based on the free market values and gets more destabilized, a lot of the trauma based stuff will emerge. Because as you have seen, there's been a massive increase in mental health issues as basic. I'm not, but when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying that in old generations there was less mental health, but I'm saying the prevalence of mental health now is worse because of lack of support. Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I remember when I was young, I actually did visit a psychiatrist, and they said to me that 1 in 2 people had anxiety or depression throughout their lives. And nowadays, that's probably the majority. That's no longer like a coin toss, whereas if someone is mentally ill or not. And that's just so problematic for society because in any collective, it's only as strong as its weakest link, basically. And you've got a society now that's become so atomized by the state. And I think a lot of it comes down to postmodernism personally. And the reason why is that because we had a lot of modernist societies, like more so communism and fascism. And in those societies, they were generally very united. They weren't fragmented cultures. Except now, when it comes to postmodernism and the rise of individualism in late stage capitalism, what's happened
Yeah,
is that there's so many subcultures.
but the thing is, Mike, what you're talking about here specifically is the fusion of liberalism and capitalist economics. And I think that's what you're referring to more to here. And that's why I'm saying it applies to more than just men, more than just war. And while, yes, these are very applicable examples of what he's talking about and what we're talking about, the signs of the PTSD and trauma is emerging in the non-war based community now, especially with the burnout of the free market stuff. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
No, that's totally correct. Yeah.
He came here from the East Coast. So I'm in Canada. And he jumped on a train from Nova Scotia because he was broke, penniless, and struggling. And he took that train, so the story goes, until he could find work. And he ended up in Hamilton, Ontario, where he worked as an iron worker. And he was a really smart guy, very intelligent, far too intelligent to be doing something like handling steel and rebar all day, but he was good at it. And back in the day, that's what people did. They just...
At the end of the day, wasn't that the story of immigrants? Immigrants and migrants had to do that and had to essentially what. And also, there's also another case here of like studies and education, where in some cases, your degrees and diplomas don't apply to in another country, so you have to redo education courses in that said country, basically downgrading your status.
Well, that's like nowadays in like modern day Australia. Because
Mike,
basically you come from
Mike.
overseas, yeah, you do need to study all over again.
Mike, we'll repeat the sentence from start. You were breaking up a little bit.
Ah, okay, no worries. Yeah, sorry about that. No, I just meant to say that that's entirely what we find here in Australia, actually. What happens is that if you come from overseas, you need to study the uni degree basically from scratch, even if you do have a uni degree from outside our borders. I mean, of course, that's something against the third world generally.
Found an opportunity and they jumped on it. We
Anyhow,
were
moving on.
raised by a very
Hmm? Oh, was that Mike? Was that Mike?
Yeah, I guess I should just also add, while I'm at it, if I can,
Sure.
did I say this guy's like Irish? Yeah, I reckon
I
he's
can,
Irish because like he said his name's Jack,
I can, t
and
I can tell he is by his face alone. I don't need to know his
yeah,
name.
yeah, that's true. Like John F. K. Good one.
The reason I can tell is the facial structure. I can tell by the facial structure he's Irish.
Old country things.
But that's just the point. What was your thing you wanted to add?
No, I suppose like I understand like the background where that man was coming from, not necessarily in his era, but if you put two and two together during the Great Depression, I mean, of course, reactionary ideas are going to form root in the populace. Like that's happening right now, actually, because you've got what 59% of people recently they said they don't support immigration to Australia. So I'm like, I totally understand that if you're an immigrant, you're coming in a time of crisis. You definitely don't want to be seen there in America. So that's why he fled to Canada, probably.
Most likely, yes. And that's also why there's also this difference between the immigrating to New Zealand versus Australia, right? It's a case where New Zealand is the better option because of that, and that's due to the naturalization process and citizenship process is far easier in New Zealand than it is in Australia.
Hmm.
Let's continue.
cold generation of men, or at least our parents were. My dad was a lot more warm, a lot more generous and kind and present in my life than my grandfather was. But not everybody has that luxury. Now, my grandpa, at a certain point, became an alcoholic, as most of our grandparents did.
And I'll add, as many people still do today,
Hmm.
when pressures come, alcoholism kicks in or substance abuse kicks in, and they want to try and deal with it by the use of alcohol.
That's across all cultures, even the Soviet Union,
Because that's
unfortunately,
just
near the end.
Yes, that was the case. Okay, you don't say Union. Let's just apply it to a Cold War context. Yes, even in Cold War context, on both sides of the Berlin Wall, it was the case. Yes.
what you did back then. And yeah, he beat the shit out of my dad. That's just how it was, right? And then I remember one day I went to my dad and I was like, does grandpa like me? How come he's so cold? How come he never talks to me or asks me how I'm doing? Am I doing something wrong?
But the thing is, isn't this whole discussion around talking and asking about how what people are doing, isn't this also dependent on another factor and that is whether if it's in the core personality of the person or not to do so. If people aren't going to be like working off emotions in their daily life, they won't ask you about your emotions. This is how it is. That doesn't mean they care any less about you. It's just a stylization at the end of the day, isn't it?
Hmm, well put.
Because when you're around a cold hearted person, you think that there's something wrong with you. and you want to try and fix it. You want to try and find out what it is. Because it's unusual, right? What did I do to deserve this? But what I didn't realize was that there was a reason he was cold-hearted. And my dad didn't tell me till I was older. But there's a reason my grandpa was such a cold-hearted man. Not just because he had a rough childhood, not just because he struggled in life and he didn't make that much money or didn't really do a lot of the things he wanted to. Not because it was hard raising a bunch of kids. There was one particular event that just changed everything. So my dad had a brother that had asthma, really bad asthma. And my grandpa used to drink because of the stress being a father when your kid is sick, amongst other things. He was just an alcoholic, right? So some days he would come home, some days he wouldn't. But one day he was at home.
On a side note, though, isn't it also the case that in Australia's situation, a lot of issues with gambling is more I guess if you want to talk about like serious issues on this nature that would affect people on this like scale, wouldn't you say gambling is going to be a huge concern?
Oh yeah, no question about it. I mean, this is what the one country in the world that has most gambling machines per capita. So I'm not really surprised. I mean, you combine it with the drink and domestic violence, and you got a totally atomized society right here. It's basically falling apart already.
And that's basically what I'm saying. That's why I said in the start. This video, I don't think it just applies to men. It applies to basically our society as a whole because it's sick in many regards in the actual society. Actual society is collapsing fundamentally at its core, and now it's degrading in terms of some aspects. Yes, the economic end is still stable enough, but it came at a great cost. That is the very stability of people's lives. People's lives are now very unstable.
And my dad's brother had an asthma attack. He collapsed on the floor and stopped breathing. And my dad came in and found his brother like that, 15 years old, laying on the floor, ice cold. And my grandpa was too fucking drunk to notice. He was too drunk to react, call an ambulance, and do something about it. So my dad found him like that and told my grandpa. Can you imagine having a son die because you were drunk and not paying attention? That's the kind of shit that will haunt the man for the rest of his life. And apparently after that, he just went off the rails and changed as a person, just completely detached. And then a couple years later, he kicked my dad out of the house when he was 18 years old. And they always had a weird relationship after that. Now, my grandpa passed away when I was about 16 or 17. And I never truly felt like I actually knew him. And this didn't bother me that much because I understood what it's like to go through traumatizing shit. Even as a young man, I understood this. Because let's be honest, bro, we're so fucking soft compared to our ancestors. They had to go deal with so much bullshit all the time.
I agree and disagree to some extent. In some things, yes, it's softer, but in other ways, it's really not.
Well, things have gotten harder, so if things get harder, you must be strong in order to survive.
Because ultimately, in terms of like ways that you can just detach from things, yes, that's gotten easier. But in some other aspects, the advantages that the previous generation had is now gone because the education costs a whole lot. Job security is gone. Housing security is gone. housing prices are increasing, and there's no price hikes on rental costs, and that basically means life is harder for most people if you are not rich.
But I question also, like, how can you actually rely on other people nowadays? Because, say, for instance, this man, he didn't really get along with some of his family, and generally speaking, you'd think family are the first people you'd go to in the event
Not
of a
necessarily.
crisis.
No, not necessarily. I'm kind of in this camp here because for me, I don't get on with family that much either. Some I get along with, some I don't. Some are completely attached.
Yeah, to be honest, like if I were not to get on with somebody in my family, I'll just like play friendly because I know like to have them on my side is a really good thing in the event of a crisis. It's like just as a last resort.
I guess though I'm the opposite in terms of like family dynamics. In terms of family dynamics, I'm the opposite. I would prefer to cut ties and move on. I don't. I would never like to play into the toxic make peace situation because that only breeds more toxicity.
Yeah, you're right
Now,
about that. I mean, it's good to have friends, but it's easier said than done nowadays with social media.
now we have everything, but we act like we have nothing. And we have to go on YouTube to watch videos on NoFap.
To be honest though, we have we have everything, and we do actors. Do we have nothing? That's actually wrong because there's wage stagnation. Okay. Wage stagnation is a thing. And Mike, after the 9 minutes, I will just send you a new link. It's fine.
All right, cool. No worries.
Um, Wage stagnation is a legitimate thing, and that's why I said I disagree and agree with him. In some areas, yes, it's easier. Some areas it's harder. The stagnation of wages, not accounting to inflation, is a kind of huge issue, which is causing people who don't have privilege a lot of strife.
Yeah, speaking of that, actually, it's an interesting thing because I'd say that right now it's probably better in terms of the inflation than it was during the COVID crash because
Now,
it's
yes,
an in
now, yes, as things had more time to stabilize, you are correct. But still, though, the whole issue around pay rates and inflation isn't good. It's
you've
still
got kind of a
trash.
weird thing. You've got kind of a weird thing where it's like, for instance, inflation over a trailing 12-month period is around 7%. But then what happens is that month to month inflation is actually really low. So at the moment, month to month inflation is about 0.3, 0.4%.
Mm-hmm.
And you can usually tell that by retail spending.
Yes,
And
correct.
so and so for like when someone has a increase in their pay packet of about 5% on an annual basis, basically inflation's gone up by 7%, the income's gone up by 5%, but in real terms the income has decreased by 2%.
Yes, correct. And that's the issue because alongside that, then often the actual domestic goods don't decrease in price either. Often domestic goods and stuff like housing and everything else also increase in price. So while yes, even if you get a pay rise of let's say the increase to the minimum wage, which was done here by Labour, right?
Hmm.
That still was inadequate to the whole grand scheme of things because because the Labour Party is really weak on trying to fix the renting crisis. And that is what is troubling most people. Most people who have help, who need help, probably who can't afford a home, are paying extortionate amounts of money into rental stuff. And if you can't cap rental stuff, all you're doing is doing a green flag to capitalist ventures in terms of rental markets to gouge prices. And how's that helping?
Scary stuff. Just absolute scary stuff.
Discontinue.
Yep.
Semen retention. You know, there's entire YouTube channels dedicated to nofap and semen retention. The video titles are like, "Women can smell semen retention." Like, shut the fuck up, dude. You're a fucking idiot. Anyways,
Yeah, the nofap
I'll
thing.
actually step in. I'll actually
Sure,
step in here. Just
feel free
my
to.
opinion is that you kind of like feel really bad after like letting go of your desires. Like you genuinely like depends on the person really, but like if you do feel bad, I can understand why people want to be more disciplined. So I mean, it's pretty like creepy that
Discipline,
example
yes.
that
Because I'm honest, yes. Discipline, yes, is fine. But honestly, the whole no fat movement, I think, is a complete joke to the most part. It's like they're so fucking cringy in most things.
well, let's be honest, the real thing's much better in any event. So I mean, if people got a choice, if they got a chance to do so, I mean, if people are young,
But
that's one good thing.
Mike, let's keep on point here.
Yeah.
Maybe later we can talk about that, but not right now, because that's a whole separate topic, which is so far away from this topic of cold-heartedness.
Yeah. Have to agree.
this kind of taught me from a young age, though, that you could be having a great life and then something could just, and all of a sudden you're fucking miserable. You're sad, you're detached. It changes your brain, changes the way you look at life. So I researched it a lot. And I found that there's a couple medical, or let's just say terms for it. Avoidant attachment style. It's where people avoid getting attached to others because they fear trauma or betrayal. There's a lot of reasons why a man becomes cold hearted. I told you that one with my grandpa. But another common one is going to war, PTSD. I know that a lot of military guys, former.
And this is where point PTSD is important. Going to war can create PTSD, yes, but also even if you don't go to war, you can still get PTSD.
All too true.
PTSD, I think saying PTSD is a cause alongside the attachment style is correct, but PTSD, let's say, for example, in Australia's case, can be caused by, let's say, the Australian social security uh, web.
It's entirely possible if you have to wait hours on the phone.
It's not, no, Mike, it's not that necessarily. It's more of the mental barrages you go under it. You get attacked mentally by them. And also on top of that, there's also the stigma the media attaches to people who are under it as well, which is horrible. Because basically then it's open season for some employers to reject you based on being that status. Media hates you for being under that status. And even within the social security network itself, you're still basically preyed on by the state. So there's basically no sanctuary in that situation.
Yeah, it's kind of like an interdependent relationship almost. I mean, because you need them for the income, they're your means of survival, the state. And then on the other hand, effectively, a lot of the income the government gives to welfare earners is tax free because they're not going to give you that much income
The
over the
issue
tax free
though,
threshold.
I'm not talking about tax free versus tax payments. I'm talking more about the impact it has on your mental health, more so. The impact it
Oh,
has on
yeah,
mental
fair enough.
the impact it has on your mental health is horrible. It basically breaks down barriers, makes you so weak and vulnerable. It destroys you, frankly.
Hmm. But make no mistake, like, can you imagine in some situations where people actually get more money than the tax free threshold while on welfare? and then they actually have to pay back the money to the tax office. Now that really troubles some people, and we can see that with the robo-debt crisis. Actually,
Oh, Weber debt. Oh, talking about the Weber debt. The
jeez,
sign. This is
that cost
actually
people lives.
this
Yeah.
is actually relevant to discussion. But the Weber debt. I'll be quick. Then I'm gonna read to the link. Because it's running low. But the Weber debt crisis. That was a case in which it's now found out that the people behind it wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Quite literally, the findings now has been reported that the people behind Burdett had a smugness to them, which I think is rightful in their case because at the end of the day, they know people who are under Centrelink will not report their abuse to them because they are too scared of consequences.
Yes.
For military guys, watch my channel. You have all my respect, bro. I can only imagine the shit that you've probably seen. When you go to war and you see horrendous things, when you do horrendous things, it changes you. About a year ago, I met a guy that was at a free speech event. People were protesting somebody speaking there. And he was putting up all of the defense on the free speech side against like 100 Antifa communist fucking loser freak shows. And he said, I've done a lot of shitty things to good people.
I'm sure this is an American thing, so I won't really judge on it too much. You there, Mike, still?
Yeah, of course. Same here, same here.
Okay, good.
But I've also done a lot of great things to shitty people. I think what he found, despite being a cold-hearted man, he stood up for their freedoms and their rights by arguing that is you weren't nurtured enough by your parents. They weren't present, they weren't around, they didn't support you. So you grew up cold. Did you know that a fucking baby could actually die if it doesn't get enough human intimacy and touching? You walk down the street and you see somebody with their head down, they look fucking miserable. They're scrolling on their phone all day.
I mean,
They're detached.
What's up?
yeah, I'm just saying that I find that crazy that actually like a baby could die. I mean, they would die in the absence of another human being, but to actually die from not having enough intimacy in itself, I guess that tells you something about the nature of abuse, how it corrupts the human mind.
I can't really say if it's true or not because I can't get verified science for the matter, so I won't make any claim for or against it.
They don't want to live anymore,
Yeah, that
so
makes
they have
sense.
like a IV of dopamine that just provides them just enough energy to keep going. They wake up just to go to sleep. They don't sleep just to wake up. That's how you know if you're depressed or not. Which side are you on? But another thing that destroys, man, is heartbreak. I know you've gone through heartbreak, bro. I've gone through heartbreak. You meet a girl, you see your entire future with her, you guys spend a lot of time together and it feels amazing. Finally, somebody that gets me, likes me for who I am, right? And then that person leaves you. No explanation. Maybe they cheated on you. Maybe you fucked up, whatever it is. And you're just left there devastated. And you're so fucking vulnerable.
Oh yeah, and on this point, this is more back on track. I was skipping the rambling.
Yeah, I get that. No, I mean I can say something too if you'd like.
Sure. You can start off. You can start this section off if you want.
Yeah, no worries. I just think like such a huge issue, like what he's talking about, that like you're forming connections, you're having intimacy, I guess, with different partners. Doesn't really matter which gender. And the problem with that is that in some sense, if you look at how everything reverts to average or everything reverts to the norm, And the norm, generally speaking, is that as time goes on, like when people get old at a certain age, they want to settle down with somebody, if that's a long life partner or getting married. And the problem is nowadays is that like with hookup culture in the 20s, so this guy like couldn't be any older than early 30s at most. And
Probably so. Yes, he does look quite young and of this generation, doesn't he?
and the problem is you're effectively creating connections that aren't supposed to last. And what happens when those connections get broken? So you're sort of leaving a little bit of yourself into every single experience, every single investment you form with a partner. And that's really what's screwing people a lot mentally, I feel, nowadays compared to the past. Everything else being equal, that is.
But the thing is, the point here is that of the depression and all that stuff. I mean, that's something that's getting only going to get worse. Because the thing is, life quality is going down genuinely. And cases of people being depressed and living in essentially people developing like high functioning depression will I just feel will increase going forward because the situation surrounding the actual condition of society today is too unstable that there's not much of a basis of to fall back on upon.
Yeah, and tying into what the man's saying, like, basically you have like all these companions, but they're kind of temporary companions in the DLC. They're guest star
In
party members.
in terms of like partnerships and relationships, potentially there could be a path line which could be destructive, yes. But the point is though, is that regardless, even taking the sexual part of it, finding people who understands you, that's the difficult part in general. Finding anyone who actually understands you and accepts you for who you are is hard. It's not an easy task nowadays at all, especially with the advent of certain things.
Yeah, I think social media kind of suppresses the soul. It kind of suppresses the authentic part of someone's inner being because, realistically speaking, social media must be superficial by its design. Whenever you have pictures, you're effectively promoting a superficial kind of thought. You're basically judging people, I should say, based on their picture, based on how their outer self presents itself to the world. But really, you need to actually have a deeper conversation with someone to actually understand the inner authentic part of their being. And that's what social media doesn't really understand because unless you have Messenger, unless you have WhatsApp, Viber, and you call somebody, texting someone, you don't really understand the person's tone.
I
And you need emojis.
for example, that's why I said at the beginning, this doesn't really apply to men only, because a lot of these issues he's talking about are not specifically unique to men. Because as ultimately the situation degrades within the liberal capitalist state itself, all these situations will be imposed on everyone.
Yeah, and that's like I guess why in the video he says how a man becomes cold-hearted because that's basically the neutral
Ex-
term in some ways. Yeah,
and
because
yeah,
man,
and yes, yes, you can see it that way. And another way you can see it is how anyone can how everyone can become cold-hearted in this situation. It's not a genetic issue, and much of these things in which like some people have talked about issues is gender based. I mean, I and some things are gender based. Don't get me wrong, but there's now a growing section of issues which are not gender based anymore, and are crossing boundaries between male, female, or whatever. If you get what I mean.
yeah, no, definitely because I mean, if some way you empower women, like you put them on the same level as men, and that obviously they're gonna share similar experiences, and the human condition is the same, generally speaking. Things don't really change over time, unfortunately.
Let's continue anyway.
Yes.
It hurts so bad. And then you think, I'm never going to let that happen again. Because pain is actually the greatest opportunity to learn a lesson. So I learned from a young age that a lot of men are cold and detached, and it has nothing to do with me. They have their own demons. And it's actually helped me a lot in life because I take things a lot less personally. I have a very stoic way of looking at it. And ironically, I look at things the same way that cold-hearted men do. Because I have become a cold-hearted man.
And that's a funny fact about this is that people like to think going forward that you'll never become that X thing. I think this is supposed to make everything else right. How people say you'll never become the X thing until you become the X thing.
It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, really.
And of course, don't get me wrong, sometimes people who say you'll never become X thing do not become X thing. That is absolutely true in some cases. But in some cases, you become that thing regardless. It's not really your own fault sometimes, it's just the circumstances surrounding things, right?
Yeah, I think like free will and destiny kind of go hand in hand because like obviously destiny, like you were gonna make those decisions in the future, but the free will is how you came to those decisions. Sorry, a bit philosophical there.
I've been fucked over a million times.
Uh, Philosophy's fine, just let's not draw out the video for too long, that's all.
On dilly
By men,
dally.
women,
That's true. Yeah.
the government, by the internet, by friends.
Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to mention here is that I'm assuming he's straight because he's talking about that dynamic, but honestly, any of these dynamics, be it sexually, emotionally, or physically, in like friendships, can apply to anyone of any gender. This best mate is perfectly clear. The issues he's talking about specifically here apply to any gender.
That's another thing that'll make a man cold-hearted. He'll have a loyal friend, somebody he trusts, and that friend will become envious, jealous. He'll want what you have. And that status that he wants so badly from you will lead him to resent you and want what you have. And then he'll betray you. You ever heard those sayings or seen that shit on Instagram, like, no fake friends? Everybody's had a fake friend at one point, but they started out as a friend.
And this is the other ironic thing is that I wonder how many people who had friends in high school kept their friends in high school for sort of situation, right?
The weird thing is that, yeah, the weird thing is that that's actually the best way to go about things, isn't it? Because realistically speaking, that's like when you're in the formative phase of your being intellectually in school. And then if you can't get along with people there, well, it's going to be harder as an adult because anyway, people who do make friends in primary and high school, they drift
I
apart.
kind of disagree to some extent, because look, the way friendships work in high school isn't real life. It's a fantasy world.
Mm. It's a weird one. In some way, it's actually harder to make friends in school. And the one reason for that is because it's basically a warm environment. So everyone kind of knows each other. There's some degree of relation between the individuals. And what happens is that if you effectively poison the well, if you have a few bad experiences with people, people are going to gossip and the news is going to spread around. It's going to be much more harder to make friends once the well has been poisoned. But then when you basically go to the ocean, when you actually leave school, then it's basically you're free to be friends with whoever you like. And there won't be that same sort of poison well effect because, well, if you piss off one group of people, there's always another one.
And as I'm saying is that like, look, even if you don't make huge amount of friends in high school, that's not a big deal. It won't it won't poison you in the future because frankly, most friends you get into school are toxic people. You don't Most friends in school you do not want to be around in the future unless they have the correct path lines. Anyway, let's not check on.
Yeah.
And then they became a fake friend. No, I wish I could care a little more. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time alone. I craved intimacy because I was different than the other kids. But that's what led me to adapt to new environments. And I had like a blunt force approach to things where I just forced myself until I got results. And that ended up making me a very caring and empathetic person. Very charismatic, very social. And I've made so many friends. I've been so successful with social interactions and dating and creating content online.
And yes, that's very possible. You can recover from those awkwardnesses. I agree. But also you might not be able to. And that's what I'm saying. Never found this sort of stuff based on your high school friendships. Because frankly, the high school, if you base all these metrics on like high school levels, it'd be very immature and unsustainable, won't it?
I think the issue is that there's just too much cliques when it comes to high school. It's really political
Oh,
environment. It's very
definitely,
similar to
definitely.
work. And
Uh,
if you're like one of those people who basically, is loud and proud, does their own thing, is a genuine individual and owns their own decisions, then school and the workplace, especially in corporate, those aren't the environments for you. You basically have to do it alone. But then again,
And
in
it all
some
started out
way,
of
like if you're one of those people who don't really fit into a particular clique, if you're one of those people who don't really acclimatize and you're not someone who lives for the collective, you live for yourself, then that's a really good thing because what's going to happen is that you're not going to kowtow to pressure. And pressure is a huge thing, especially in school, and it can lead you down to the dark path. So effectively, it's what Thomas Jefferson said, that it's better to be by yourself than to be in bad company.
let's continue.
love and the search for love. Because that's what finding purpose is in life. You want to find a way to get love from other people by providing value. That's what purpose is. If you're a firefighter saving somebody from a building, you're providing love to the family of the person you're saving so that they can continue to spend time with that person. And that person is given love by you saving them so they can continue living. Just like if you work at a restaurant and you bring somebody a coffee and food, you're allowing them to enjoy that food with somebody they love or by themselves and experience that pleasure eating so they can relax from that stressed out, tough life or job they have. Everybody's actually doing the same fucking thing. We all just have a different way of doing it. And when you don't know what that is, it can be very frustrating. You'll be punching air. Nobody gets through life unscathed, off the hook. We all have scars. Some have less than others.
The way I think about this is that you are who you are based on how you respond to what happens to you.
Yeah, genuinely speaking, that's what really brings out the inner authentic self. And I'm not sure if I really agree with this guy that you necessarily have to provide in order to have a purpose. Because generally speaking, for me, I think a purpose is more so akin to a mission.
But the thing is, I didn't really understand. He's speaking from his own perspective. This whole video is his own perspective. Much of YouTube is their own perspectives. This is us two of our own perspectives. So of course we all disagree to some extent.
And I also think, like, in some way, when he's saying that, like, no one has, like, everyone has scars, no one doesn't have a scar. I kind of think of wounds as being immediate emotional response to stimuli. So I definitely see wounds as kind of being remorse in the most acute sense possible, guilt. And I kind of think scars as being regrets, like where we can look coolly into the past and basically say, okay, I definitely made a mistake, and now I'm going to use that as stimulus for learning, so as to not make the same mistake again. But dare I say, like, there's probably 0.5% of the population, either the people who go to confession or the people who are remorseless, and those people have no regrets. So yes, that is the rule that people have regrets. People do have scars, but there's also the exception as well.
For example, right though, in terms of my personality, as you know, is more serving others. But it's different from his description, as you know. But the point is, as a whole, is that I think that having got from all this is that of the fact that adversity is something in which is learned, regardless if you like it or not. Especially, and I'm adding context to this by saying, as I said once more, within the fusion of the liberalism and capitalism spectrum, that makes this whole dynamic far, far more toxic.
Hmm. No question about it.
But to be honest, you can't really trust a man that doesn't have any scars because he hasn't been through anything.
I
Yeah,
don't, I don't really agree with that, to be honest, as well. I mean, yes, you can to a certain extent, but in
You need to
uh,
learn from him, right? Yeah.
um, maybe learn from to some extent, but honestly, it depends on what the context is for this dynamic.
he hasn't been tested.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I trust men that have scars and have been tested. Because as much as most people want to pretend that they're different, you're just like everybody that had a couple too many drinks and got in the car, started driving. Because you can't gain trust necessarily. You start out in life with trust, and then over time you learn lessons and you lose trust. Because if you trusted everybody, you'd be fucking dead, bro. I think about that sometimes. Because I used to be a very empathetic person. I wasn't that cold hearted. I was very warm hearted. And I got betrayed a lot. Friends, people I looked up to, women, like I said, the government.
Anyway, I got it on time, so I have to leave it here.
Yeah, I'll just be quick and say, like, I was genuinely impressed. I mean, the guy has experience, so I definitely trust, now that we're on the topic in what he's saying. He definitely has like a lot of like good stuff in here. I thought at the beginning that he was gonna talk about his own personal experience being cold-hearted, so he didn't really like focus on the subject all that much. But still, I feel like in a lot of these videos, when someone actually like clicks on them, they're basically looking for advice to apply to their own situation. So I really feel that I learned not as much as some other people would, but it's still overall positive, is my impression.
And at the end of the day, these sort of equations is like what you get from these sort of videos anyway is if you're already tainted, you're not.
No, you're just saying like what people really get from these videos, and like if you're
Yes, yes, yes,
tainted,
yes,
if
yes,
you're
yes,
already
yes,
cold-hearted, then
yes,
sort of like, oh
yes,
yeah.
yes, of course. Well, yes. If you already have an experience of culture around this, you would get where he's coming from, and it won't seem so hostile topic. But if you're innocent, it'll be alien, and you'll be full of hope and expectations. But the thing is, with anything like this, the term cold-hearted is as well is a term in which is very unique. It exists, but it's not really understood. And for some, it's an automatic negative in which is a curse for those who actually are it by circumstance. It's
I agree.
ultimately it's ultimately a case of yes, you learn stuff, you get better at flexibility and adaptability, but the side effect is you get punished for it more so in the long run by having those which are naive or too innocent, not understanding the reality of the matter, therefore them discrediting any advice you say on this, only to maybe realize later on when it's too late that you're right.
You're right.